Graceland, the estate of legendary singer Elvis Presley, is facing a legal battle now over a potential foreclosure sale.
It's March 15th, 2025, and a maintenance crew is doing routine work in Graceland's upper levels when they discover something that shouldn't exist. Behind a false wall in the attic, there's a section that's been completely sealed off for 48 years. Not renovated, not converted into museum space, not touched by anyone since Elvis Presley died in 1977. The workers call their supervisors, who call the estate managers, who call the lawyers, because according to every blueprint, every renovation record, every piece of documentation about Graceland, this space doesn't exist. It's been hidden so well that even the people who've been running Elvis tours for decades had no idea it was there. But here's where it gets really weird. The seal isn't just drywall and paint. This thing was professionally constructed with multiple layers of soundproofing, climate control, and what looks like a sophisticated security system that's still somehow running after all these years. Someone spent serious money to make sure this area stayed hidden and protected. Lisa Marie Presley had died just 2 years earlier, and her estate documents mentioned something that nobody understood at the time. There was a clause about a protected space that was never to be disturbed, with specific instructions that it should remain sealed until certain legal conditions were met. The lawyers thought it was just Elvis being paranoid about his privacy. They had no idea it was a real place. The estate managers are looking at each other like they've just discovered buried treasure, but they're also terrified because Elvis Presley was famously secretive about certain aspects of his life, and if he went to this much trouble to hide something, it probably wasn't his cookie recipes and Christmas cards. They bring in structural engineers to make sure the building is safe. They bring in lawyers to figure out what they're legally allowed to do. They bring in security experts because nobody knows what they're dealing with. But it gets worse. The security system isn't just protecting what's inside from getting out. It's designed to protect what's inside from people getting in. There are motion sensors, temperature monitors, and what appears to be some kind of communication system that's been sending regular signals to an outside location. This isn't just a storage space. This is a bunker. The estate managers realize they're in over their heads. This isn't just about finding some hidden Elvis memorabilia. This is about discovering a secret that Elvis thought was important enough to spend a fortune protecting, even after his death. The kind of secret that requires professional-grade security and decades of maintenance. They call in a team of experts, and after hours of careful work, they finally breach the seal. The first thing that hits them is the air. It's clean, filtered, perfectly climate-controlled. This isn't a dusty old attic. This is a living space. And that's when they hear it. Movement. Not the settling of an old house or the whisper of air conditioning. Actual movement. Like someone walking around in there. The security team goes in first, and what they find changes everything we thought we knew about Elvis Presley. Because Elvis didn't just hide his secrets in that attic. He hired someone to guard them. Someone who has been living up there, completely cut off from the outside world, for 48 years. The person they find isn't some random caretaker or forgotten employee. This is someone Elvis trusted with his life. Someone who knew secrets so dangerous that Elvis believed they needed a human guardian. Someone who gave up their entire existence to protect whatever Elvis was desperate to keep hidden. But here's the question that's keeping everyone awake at night. What could possibly be so important, so explosive, so devastating that Elvis Presley would arrange for someone to spend their entire life guarding it? What secrets are worth 48 years of complete isolation? The answer is about to shatter everything you thought you knew about the king of rock and roll. The person they found living in Elvis's secret attic wasn't some But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Marcus wasn't being held prisoner. He chose this life. Elvis had offered him a deal in the months before his death, and Marcus accepted it willingly. Elvis told him, "I need someone I can trust completely to watch over something that could destroy people I care about. It means giving up everything, your normal life, relationships, your freedom. But it also means protecting innocent people from something that could ruin them forever." Marcus had always been different from his brother Charlie, who was part of Elvis's inner circle and loved the spotlight. Marcus was quiet, intensely loyal, and had a gift for keeping secrets. Elvis had noticed this about him over the years, and when Elvis realized he needed someone to be a guardian of his most dangerous secrets, Marcus was the only person he trusted completely. The arrangement was elaborate and carefully planned. Marcus would live in the specially constructed attic space, which was essentially a small apartment complete with a bedroom, bathroom, kitchenette, and even a small library. He would have everything he needed to survive comfortably, but he could never leave, never contact the outside world, and never tell anyone what he was protecting. In exchange, Elvis set up a trust fund that would take care of Marcus for life, and more importantly, would take care of Marcus's family. Marcus had been supporting his disabled mother and younger sister, and Elvis promised they would be provided for as long as Marcus kept his end of the bargain. When Marcus's mother and sister eventually passed away years later, Marcus chose to stay anyway. By then, protecting Elvis's secrets had become his entire identity. But what was Marcus actually guarding? His living space was connected to a series of climate-controlled storage areas that contained things Elvis never wanted anyone to find. Not just documents or recordings, but evidence of relationships, financial arrangements, and deals that could have destroyed careers and lives. Marcus wouldn't tell the security team exactly what was in there, but he made it clear that Elvis hadn't been paranoid. He'd been protecting people who were still alive.
For 48 years, Marcus had been receiving updates about the outside world through a single contact. A lawyer who brought him supplies and information, but never knew exactly what Marcus was protecting. Marcus used this information to decide whether any of Elvis's secrets needed to be revealed, to help or protect people. In all those years, he'd never opened a single sealed container. The security team realizes they're not just dealing with hidden documents or recordings. They're dealing with a man who has become the keeper of Elvis Presley's moral legacy. Someone who has spent nearly 5 decades weighing the ethics of truth versus protection. But Marcus Hodge isn't ready to give up his post. Even now, at 76 years old, even after being discovered, he insists that his job isn't finished. Because according to Marcus, the secrets he's been guarding aren't just about Elvis. They're about people who are still alive, still vulnerable, still in need of protection. The question now becomes, what could be so devastating that it's worth a man's entire life to keep hidden? Marcus Hodge finally breaks his 48-year silence, and what he reveals makes everyone in that room wish they'd never found him. Because Elvis wasn't just protecting scandalous affairs or financial secrets. He was protecting evidence of a systematic cover-up that reached into the highest levels of the music industry, Hollywood, and even government circles. The sealed containers that Marcus had been guarding contained documentation of something Elvis called the network, a group of powerful men who had been using their positions to exploit young performers throughout the 1960s and 70s. Elvis had stumbled onto this web of abuse early in his career, but instead of exposing it immediately, he'd started secretly documenting everything, building an ironclad case that could bring down dozens of industry titans. Marcus explains that Elvis had been gathering evidence for years. Photographs, audio recordings, financial documents, witness statements. Everything needed to prove that some of the biggest names in entertainment had been running. Elvis faced an impossible choice. He could expose the truth and get justice, but destroy innocent people in the process. Or he could stay silent and let the abusers continue operating. So Elvis chose a third option. He started using his evidence as leverage to quietly shut down the network from the inside. Marcus reveals that in Elvis's final years, he wasn't just battling his own demons with drugs and fame. He was systematically blackmailing network members into retirement, using his evidence to force them out of positions where they could harm others. Elvis would approach them privately, show them what he had on them, and give them a choice: disappear quietly or be exposed publicly. It was working. By 1977, several major industry figures had mysteriously stepped down from powerful positions, citing health problems or family obligations. Record executives who had been known for throwing parties with underage performers suddenly became reclusive,
Movie producers who had been notorious for their casting couch tactics quietly retired to private life. But Elvis knew this strategy would only work as long as he was alive. Once he died, someone else would need to continue the work, and that someone was Marcus Hodge. Elvis had trained Marcus to understand the evidence, to recognize the players, and to make the same impossible moral calculations that Elvis had been making. For 48 years, Marcus had been watching. When network members tried to make comebacks, Marcus would arrange for certain information to be leaked anonymously. When victims needed protection from exposure, Marcus would ensure that specific evidence stayed buried. He'd been Elvis's ghost, continuing to fight a war that the public never knew existed. But the most shocking revelation is that some of these network members are still alive today. Marcus shows the security team recent newspaper clippings about industry veterans who are now in their 80s and 90s, still being celebrated for their contributions to entertainment. Men who have foundations named after them, who receive Lifetime Achievement Awards.
Marcus explains that Elvis died knowing he'd created a moral time bomb. Eventually, all the network members would die of old age, and their victims would be gone too. Marcus was supposed to wait until everyone involved was dead, then destroy the evidence without anyone ever knowing the truth. Justice through time, rather than justice through exposure. But now Marcus faces his own impossible choice. He's 76 years old, and some of the network members are still alive. Some of their victims are still alive too. If he destroys the evidence now, the guilty escape justice forever. If he releases it, innocent people get hurt all over again. For nearly 5 decades, Marcus has been the keeper of a secret too dangerous to tell and too important to forget. And now, he has to decide whether Elvis's strategy of protection was right, or whether the time has finally come to let the truth destroy everyone it touches. The question that haunts everyone who knows this story: is there ever a secret so dangerous that it's worth a lifetime to protect? The discovery of Marcus Hodge and Elvis's hidden archive created a crisis that nobody was prepared to handle. The estate lawyers, the security team, everyone who learned about the network faced the same impossible question that had tormented Elvis and Marcus for decades. What do you do with a truth that has the power to destroy both the guilty and the innocent? The initial reaction was to lock everything down even tighter. The estate managers sealed off the attic again, this time with Marcus's permission, and imposed strict non-disclosure agreements on everyone involved. They weren't just protecting Elvis's legacy anymore. They were protecting living people, both victims and their families, from a scandal that could reach into the highest levels of American entertainment and politics. But Marcus Hodge had spent 48 years carrying this burden alone, and he was tired. He told the estate representatives that he wanted to make one final decision about the evidence before he died. He'd been Elvis's conscience for nearly half a century. More troubling, some of the victims mentioned in the documents had built successful careers and families without ever speaking publicly about their experiences. They'd moved on with their lives, and suddenly exposing their trauma could be just as destructive as the original abuse. The victim advocates made it clear that survivors have the right to keep their stories private, and that decision should never be taken away from them. Marcus spent months meeting with a select group of advisors, wrestling with the same questions that had consumed Elvis. They developed several possible approaches. Destroy everything and let the truth die with the participants. Selectively release information about network members who were already dead. Or maintain the status quo, with Marcus training a replacement guardian. But there was another factor that nobody had anticipated. Word about the discovery had started to leak, despite all the non-disclosure agreements. Rumors were circulating in Hollywood and Nashville about a major Elvis revelation that was being covered up. Investigative reporters were starting to ask questions, and some industry veterans were getting nervous about what might be exposed. The pressure was building for some kind of disclosure. But Marcus had learned from Elvis that partial truths can be more dangerous than complete silence. If the story came out without the full context,
It could destroy innocent people while letting the real perpetrators escape justice by claiming they were being unfairly targeted in a sensationalized scandal. In the end, Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone involved. He chose to destroy most of the evidence, but not all of it. He kept detailed files on network members who were still alive, along with instructions that this information should be released to law enforcement if these individuals ever tried to use their remaining influence to harm others. It was Elvis's original strategy, extended one more generation. For the evidence involving deceased network members, Marcus made copies available to a small group of victim advocates and investigative journalists, but only with the agreement that they would contact any living victim.
Marcus Hodge died peacefully in his sleep 6 months after being discovered, still living in his attic sanctuary at Graceland. The estate has converted part of his space into a private memorial, not to the secrets he guarded, but to the principle he represented, that sometimes protecting people is more important than exposing the truth. The remaining evidence Marcus preserved is still sealed, still guarded, still waiting for the right moment or the right circumstances to see daylight. The network that Elvis fought is mostly gone now, dissolved by time rather than exposure. But Marcus's final files serve as a reminder that power and abuse often hide behind the most celebrated facades. Elvis Presley died trying to balance justice with protection. Marcus Hodge spent 48 years continuing that impossible balancing act. And somewhere in the sealed archives at Graceland, that moral complexity lives on, waiting for the next person brave enough to carry the burden of dangerous truth. What do you think? Was Marcus right to destroy evidence that could have brought justice? Or should truth always win regardless of who gets hurt? Some secrets are too dangerous for daylight, but others are too important for darkness. Drop your thoughts below. And if this story left you questioning everything you thought you knew about Elvis, smash that subscribe button for more shocking celebrity revelations.